Right, welcome to another edition of the Old Parish Trooper podcast. And it is my pleasure today to be joined with Fathers4Justice CEO, Mr. Matt O'Connor. How you doing, Matt? All right?
Morning, sir. How are you, Chris? Nice to meet you, sir.
I am very, very well. Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I just want to quickly explain to the followers and the viewers, because you're not my kind of usual type of guest.
No.
The podcast itself is designed, or kind of one of its main aims is to raise awareness for mental health among veterans, emergency service workers, and as a whole for everyone, really.
Yeah.
So I just thought there'd be quite a lot of close ties with kind of mental health, and obviously dads in a sort of position of not being able to see their children.
Yeah.
I kind of think they tie in very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just over to you really. Tell me about sort of how Fathers4Justice came about, please, Matt.
Well, I started Fathers4Justice 23 years ago. It sounds like a bloody long time. But I started it because I was going through the family courts. I had no access to my two boys at the time, Daniel and Alexander, and I couldn't believe it when I went to the court system that I had no rights in law to see my children. And I was in a pretty bad space at the time. My spiritual advisor was Sir Jack of Daniels. And so I was drinking a lot to kind of anesthetize the pain, to try and get through the fact I couldn't see my kids, I couldn't get to my house. I was going through the courts, and I think it's fair to say, my life was like ground zero. My business partner had been killed. I had 15 quid left in my pocket at one point. I had no car. I'd say literally no business, nothing. So I couldn't get to my house, couldn't see my kids, couldn't get a property out of the house, nothing. And I thought that was it. I thought it was game over. I just didn't think I could survive it, because what was there left for me? There was nothing. And so it took me to a really, really dark place where I was this self-medicating with alcohol was a real issue. And I've still got the scars from that 23 years later. I'm not fully over it. But I'm over the worst of it, but it's still an issue. I speak to dads every day who are going through it, like right here, right now. And so it does bring it back to you all the time, every day. You speak to somebody whose case reminds you of your own, and that sort of cruel, inhumane experience that the courts put you through, and they treat you like, you wouldn't treat a dog the way you treat dads in the family courts. But the time I was going through it, I went for help with another organisation called Families Need Fathers, who at the time did a lot of pastoral care work with dads. And I got into this pub in East London, Chris, and there was this sort of stale fog of desperation hanging over everybody. We're still smoking in pubs and bars at the time. There was like people crying into their beer, and sort of map with a sort of list of top suicide spots in Britain. Packet of paracetamol, and I'm exaggerating slightly, but it was pretty desperate stuff.
Yeah.
And I went to the meeting. I thought, I cannot fucking do this. There was no hope. There was nothing. All hope had been extinguished. There was nothing to look to, nothing to move forward to. There was no. So I just got up. I got thrown out of the meeting within about 20 minutes because I'm a bit of a provocateur at the best of times, and I got up onto a chair and started lecturing them about how they were getting it all wrong. And I was quite arrogant. I was probably drunk. I was disruptive, and they had their own way of doing things. And in hindsight, I respect that. But at the time, I thought, guys, we've got to stand up. We've got to fight back. We've got to speak out. We have to do something. We just cannot let this carry on. And so that was my kind of starting point. And I relocated. I was in Curtin Road in London. I relocated after my business partner was killed up to Suffolk, and got up there and decided that I was going to do something about this. But I was still going through the courts. The courts were denying me access to my children. I got access in a contact center, which is probably one of the worst experiences of my life, but it did allow me to restart the relationship with my kids. And that kind of worked. But the court system is like a hamster wheel of misery. You go into hearing after hearing after hearing, and it breaks you down. It destroys you. It absolutely will destroy you without the right advice and the right support. So emotionally, I mean, nobody gives a shit about the mental health of fathers going through this process. It is so degrading. It is so dehumanizing. You are taking, somebody's children from them, often on the flimsiest of grounds, often on basis of false allegations, which are endemic in the system, because mothers make false allegations to get free legal aid. And mothers can do it with impunity, in secret, behind closed doors. Even Kim Jong-un would go, oh, hang on, guys, this is a bit extreme even for me. Yeah. This is what's happening. And it's happening to all of us on the basis of our gender, simply because you're a man. So it feeds the narrative, the feminist narrative, which is like all women are victims, all men are perpetrators, all boys are perpetrators. So that's what you find in the secret family court system. I'd had enough. I just I can't continue with this because it's killing me. Even though I was seeing the children in a contact centre, but we were making no progress in court. I got into court. I was in the Royal Courts of Justice, Chris. I climbed up onto the bench. If you saw me, not the easiest thing to do at my size. I'm surprised I didn't flat pack it straight away. But anyway, he got on and said to the judge, I said, I'm going to put you out of a fucking job if it's the last thing I do on God's earth. I'm going to come back. I'm going to bring 200 dads with me, behind me, and we're going to deal with it. And so I jumped down, walked out of the court, and a Kafkas officer, his name was Maggie Derrick, I always remember it. She said, Matt, where are you going? Where are you going? I said, I'm done. I'm not going around this hamster wheel of misery anymore. I am not fucking doing it. 2 weeks later, I had the kids up staying with me.
Brilliant.
And that's what we call the retreat strategy, where you pull out. Now, you've got to know your grounds, and I didn't care at that point. But the grounds was obviously my ex was seeking to punish me by gatekeeping my contact with the children. She had no grounds to do so, as proven by the fact that it was all sorted out like that. It was all sorted really, really quickly. But even after I started seeing the children, I still had this idea that we could set up a campaign group. I was going to go off and do a restaurant. I used to design bars and restaurants, hence I look the way I do, Chris, which is unlike your fashionable good self. I suffer from wardrobe dysfunction, or as an old girlfriend said to me, wardrobe malfunction, probably. See me from an international space station. But anyway, so I didn't pursue my career in design. I dropped out of doing bars and restaurants. I carried on doing my ice cream stuff. I had an ice cream brands and I was working in that. But I wanted to have this kernel of an idea where we could just come up with something that was a political campaign. And as a kid, when I was supposed to be doing my A-levels, I was on miners' picket lines and I was protesting, and I was in C&D. I was in the anti-apartheid movement. I was born and raised in the Labour Party, who I've no longer have any dealings with. But it was I had that kind of, I was brought up, I'm an activist as well as a factivist.
Yeah.
And I care. I can't help that. That's probably from my mother's side of the family, but we're very passionate, we're very caring, very emotional, and so I sort of harnessed into all that old protesting stuff, and I kind of reinvented it, and we sort of came up with the idea of a name, because people want to call it like Parents for Parity and all that shitty woke nonsense. I go, no, we'll do what it says on the tin. We're Fathers for Justice. That's my story. And actually, it's a love story about my children, because about me trying to get to see my children, which I did do and did achieve, and up to the present day, and loving my kids and supporting my kids. But that was born of the concept of Fathers for Justice. And then I just, we kind of escalated. We started off with some little ideas, and then we escalated from that to doing some kind of more kind of protests. At the time, we were still speaking to politicians. We were still had a dialogue with politicians. That didn't last very long because we started handcuffing them and powder bombing them in the House of Commons. Tony Blair got
Probably annoy him a bit.
yeah, it's fair to say I've been taken off the Christmas card list, though but the best recommendation I ever had was a Tony Blair spokesman said, Fathers for Justice is the worst campaign group I have ever heard of. And we went, brilliant, but you have heard of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have heard of us. So yeah, so we then escalated, we did a few cranes, and then we did the Tony Blair powder bombing in May 2004. Then we went and did the Church of England at York Minster. They were doing a general synod thing, so we stormed that, and I got to speak from the pulpit. Would you believe it? Dressed as a priest in front of 1,000 people, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, who, to be fair, did not also look very happy. And then we went on to Batman at Buckingham Palace, and then we took National Lottery off air, and then we ended up in this weird hinterworld of like, you've got undercover journalists following around with parabolic directional microphones, you've got undercover police following you around.
Wow.
State opening of Parliament the other day, and I remember them, I think this is in 2004 or 2005, they sent me a map. Well, they said you can't go within the M25. And I said, well, I work in the M25 and I had this ice cream chain in London at the time. So I have to go into it. Eventually they restricted it, sent me a little map of a blue line. I wasn't allowed in a blue line around Buckingham Palace or etc. So there was a lot of stuff, a lot of threats and stuff. And but over the years, we've gone from there to evolving into a help organization. So we still do some campaign stuff. We still do stuff in that, which is really important. We keep doing it, but it's evolved and it has changed. And where we have most impact in our work is helping dads day in, day out in the family courts. We've probably got the most experienced team in the country. We've got 23 years experience. We've had over 1 million inquiries. We've dealt with everybody from sort of top celebrity chefs, film directors, the Guy Ritchie Madonna case. We're involved in Van Morrison's case, Arisha from JLS. And then I've dealt with kind of sort of like over the time, 3 prime ministers and countless politicians and stuff. So we keep every day, we're at the coalface every day. I said, my team are in court today. As I said, you just earlier, had a misfortune to have a call with a family law solicitor. And, you know, I've since recovered, but every day our job is to try and help people get through it. But it is a struggle. It's a struggle when you realize that the most at-risk group, suicide group of men, are separated dads. And that was something that was only recognized by the Samaritans, I think, back in 2019. So separated dads are men aged 45 to 59. And the Samaritans said separation from children appears to be a significant factor in some men's suicides. And that's the human cost. If we talk about men's generic term, and we talk about everybody's got rights, women's got rights, trans rights, rare rights, right? Where's the discussion about men? Why do we have a minister for women, but no minister for men? More men die from cancer than women. More men, yeah, the suicide rate is 3 times. I think it's 14, 15 men a day take their own lives. Why don't we have a minister for men dealing with that? Why don't we have somebody tackling the fundamental issues? They say, feminists like themselves, toxic masculinity. In my view, there's nothing toxic about masculinity. The only thing that's toxic is the way we treat our sons, the way we treat our brothers, the way we treat our fathers. That's what's toxic. The labeling of our boys in schools. I had this with my son, youngest son, you know, where he was told, you are a threat to women when he was 14, 15, threat to women. If you see a woman, you must cross to the other side of the road.
Wow.
That is ideology in our schools as I speak. That is still there. And that is the message. And they're going, oh, Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate. No, I don't have a view on Andrew Tate particularly. But they say, oh, it's all toxic. He's teaching these children example. Okay, hang on a minute. Who's raising these children? Women. Who's teaching these children? Mostly women. You know, they're surrounded by women. The problem is they're not surrounded by men. Going to estates in London, the nearest father figure is local drug dealer, the local gang leader. This is what you're doing by removing men and fathers from the lives of their children. You are creating this culture, but they're just batshit crazy. They can't see the wood for the trees. They don't understand, or don't appear to understand, what they're doing. We've got a parliament with more women than ever in parliament. Are they interested in equality for men and boys? No. You won't hear a word about it from any women in there, because again, they're all pursuing this ideological, anti-male, misandrist ideology. So that's my starting point with why I feel strongly about it. I'm a father of 3 boys. I still care. I don't want anything to happen to them. And we've had some issues in places. And they go, Dad, Christ, you're right. Yeah, they might have, when they were kids at school, and we're running around the country dressed as superheroes and climbing buildings and stuff. And they're going like, God, Dad's a bit. But then, guess what? You know, it happens to you. And I've had this with everybody. I've spoken to taxi drivers, MPs who've disagreed with me. Gorgeous George Galloway. I'm going to name drop. Gorgeous George, like, Mark, I don't know, like, a cut of your jib, like this. And I was doing an interview with him on Talk Radio years ago. And then I said to him, George, I cannot believe you would swallow government propaganda. He said, I have never, ever swallowed government propaganda, like this. And it was like, and a few years later, he went through the courts. And guess what? You know, he became a supporter. So, but yeah, so my job, if I have a job, you know, is to be provocateur, to shake things up, to get support to men every day, day in, day out. There's a lot more we need to do, because we don't get funding from anybody else. We don't get, you know, there's nobody gives a shit about men. It's really, really difficult to get any funding at all. You know, I'd love to have a free helpline. We don't have one, unfortunately, at the moment. We're struggling. We're trying to get one sorted. But I would like to see a minister for men and a safety net to help men and men in desperation. Like, I think 75%, 80% of men who are separated now live in poverty. They live in shared bed sits where they can't allow, their kids are not allowed to come and stay. They struggle with housing because they're bottom of the priority list.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's you see it all the time. I see it all the time. I've got a lot of friends that are separate, and they've had right battles on. The child support agency is not the best either. It's not. I don't feel like it's very, 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 very supportive. It doesn't factor in a lot of things, and you get no support, or you get no help financially. But the kind of mother seems to. And I'll just touch on, like, isn't it a shame that you had to resort to the whole? I mean, I grew up watching some of the. I remember the Batman at Buckingham Palace. I was in my early 20s and stuff, and I kind of remember it. But isn't it a shame you had to resort to them kind of extreme tactics, as it were, to gather the attention when all you want to do is about striking a balance? Now, I believe I'm generalizing here, but fathers probably fit into kind of a few groups. You've got the fathers, like I believe I am, that obviously yourself are, that will fight nail and tooth to kind of whatever costs to see their children. I think you get another category of fathers that start out that way, but then for whatever reason, they kind of, and I see this quite a lot as well, they fight and fight and fight, and then they just lose the will to live with it because they're not getting any support. They give up. And then obviously you've probably got the category of dads that never give a shit from the start and are happy to walk out and never see the kids. And I know I'm generalizing, there's lots of ifs and buts, but that's kind of,
I think you're spot on the money, Chris. I mean, I see it from all sides. I've seen it from all sides. We get emails from women complaining that dads left the children, abandoned the children, or is simply not bothered about the children. And I've no doubt that is clearly, I've seen it, I've witnessed it firsthand. So I know that is definitely the case. We're not saying that all dads are angelic and all mums are demons, but also we shouldn't be saying that all mums are sugar and spice and all things nice, and all dads are, are violent, dog kicking, bush lurking nutters. And so it's removing those stereotypes. But what you've got under the law, and this is the issue, We have a nation, we've been turned into a nation of cash points and sperm banks. We're basically sperm banks because we have an obligation to pay for children, but we have no right to see those children. So you have no lawful right to see your children. And successive governments have looked at it. And when David Cameron, who we were dealing with, got into power with the Lib Dems, I think in 2010, there was a thing called that the previous Labour administration were running called the Family Justice Review. But the Cameron allowed that to run, broke his promises to us. And the Family Justice Review, which David Norgrove wrote, said fathers have no rights and should have no rights because it would trump what's called the child's best interest principle. But what he omitted to mention was the fact that the de facto presumption of the courts, the institutional discrimination, is the child shall live with the mother and the father shall have access to what they call now a presumption of parental involvement. Well, let me tell you, parental involvement doesn't see in your kids. Parental involvement can be sending a Christmas card once a year or a birthday card once a year. It is derisory, it is derogatory, and it's a fundamental breach, in my opinion, of the child's right to family life with both sides of its family, the family tree, yeah? Mother, father, and effectively what the courts do is take an axe right down the fucking middle and chop out the father, they chop out the paternal grandmother, the paternal grandfather, the aunts, the uncles, everybody on that side of the family loses. And grandparents go for double the heartbreak, they go for themselves, and they go for it for their children. So this is the law in this country. We don't have. You were in the army, yeah?
I was, yeah.
So you went to fight for a country that doesn't afford you the rights to be a father. And we deal with a lot of servicemen, Chris, in the army. In fact, just taking on a new client who's a serviceman he's in the paratrooper regiment. Now, this guy, young guy, no access to his daughter. He's been buggered around by social services, everybody who have treated him like dog shit, right? This is a guy who was at a festival one day. The next day, he was in Kabul, helping to organise the evacuation of Kabul, where people, his friends, have been blown apart. And this is how we treat our servicemen in this country. It is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. So I feel very strongly and passionately about this because I don't think anybody should be put in this position, any father. There should be an automatic presumption of contact. There should be an automatic presumption of 50-50 shared care, but the courts start from the presumption that you are a risk as the father. So that you have to be risk assessed.
Why is that though? What is there must be some sort of logic from their perspective of why that is and why we've got no rights. I mean, we're in 2024. Again, you could argue that women have had a rough deal of it for probably centuries, and now we're getting. I'm being, I'm probably being a bit.
You're right. You're right.
But we're in 2024 now. It doesn't take a lot of brains to work out that with everything, there needs to be a balance. And it just seems that we can't get that balance right. And now we're getting that no rights, not being able to see our children kind of thing. And why can't we just strike the balance? Why the law can't change?
Well, because government is and I say this to everybody. It is run by an ideology. It's a bureaucratic command structure. And under that ideology, you have the people like the Harriet Harmans and stuff who've been responsible for a lot of the anti-male legislation over the years, which is say all men are perpetrators and all women are victims. And everything's slanted from that angle. And, what we would like to see, is we'd like to see parental equality, which doesn't sound like a radical ask, Hey, what? Everybody else has got equal rights. Why can't we? Why can't I have equal rights? Got meat and 2 fucking veg downstairs. Is that why you're telling me I can't have equal rights? Or my children, my 3 sons, can't have equal rights? I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you? But that is the reality in the court system, and it's a bureaucratic command structure which is ideologically driven, and they've reversed the presumption of innocence before guilt. It's now guilty until innocent, until the courts prove they're innocent. So that's how the presume it's Kafkas, you go to court, make an application, Kafkas would produce a safeguarding letter, and they'll speak to mum and they'll speak to you. And a lot of mothers, I'm afraid, will game the system. They'll make allegations to get free legal aid, right? Is endemic right across the system. And those allegations are taken at face value. I mean, just switch on the TV and look at the Me Too movement, right? Johnny Depp, I had a conversation with a good criminal barrister. I don't have many barrister friends, but she's a criminal barrister. She's very good. And we met outside the Johnny Depp Amber Heard hearing, I think a couple of years ago, in the RCJ. And she thought he'd get off. And I said to her, he is never getting off. It's a single judge in court making a determination about whether or not the son had libeled him. And judges in this country are incredibly like Jurassic judges, Stone Age thinking, prehistoric courts, right? They will always go with the mother, literally in all cases. And despite Amber Heard being the only person who'd been arrested for domestic abuse, the only person who'd admitted domestic abuse, the court found against Johnny Depp. He was obviously proven innocent in America before a jury, which is correct. But you've got to understand the mindset that comes to this now, which is great. If you say, okay, you're applying this and you're protecting the children, but they're not, because mum can go out and bring back the next Tom, Dick, or Sally. Nobody cares. So the father, who is statistically the safest person for the child to be with, the safest, is removed, and then mum and whoever can raise that child. And nobody gives a shit. And when you start picking apart the injustices and the contradictions and the risk to children, and we have a Dickensian legacy in this country of failing children. Every week there's virtually some scandal involving social services who failed to protect a child from the mother or mother and her boyfriend. And there's a long list of horrific scandals because social services are not fit for purpose. I had an argument with a social worker last year, and I said to her, you know, I wouldn't let you look after my pet goldfish. And I spoke to her about half an hour later, so I just want to apologise because I'd given her a really bit of a bee sting. And she said, oh, don't worry, Matt, you know, you don't worry, we understand. So no, I'm apologising because if I don't actually have a pet goldfish, but if I did have a pet fucking goldfish, I wouldn't let you anywhere near it. These people are mostly untrained or poorly trained. Half of social workers or agency staff, their legacy is Dickensian, failing child after child after child. So our child protection system isn't fit for purpose, and we're removing the people who the children are safest with. So if you can make any sense of it, you'll be doing better than me, but it requires a political solution. And of course, nobody's interested these days.
No, it's and you can see now, I suppose, like you've done, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your arse, with what you've done and kind of bring it to the forefront. And I think it was genius to do what you did with the whole superheroes and everything. So it's like I say, I you know, it's 20 years ago or probably more now, and I still remember it. And you know, everyone that's on my watch are of a similar age, and we were kind of, when I said that I got you on as a guest, we were chatting about it last night, and we all remember the thing. And like I say, so what you've done there is brought it to the forefront, but I still find it, I can't wrap my head around the fact that we're 20 years on from that, one of those first, you know, well, a bit longer first instances, and still you're kind of still in the same boat when it comes to male rights.
Well, to some extent, it's better and it's worse. See, when I started FA, it was a 3-year project. So I thought I would change the law in 3 years. I mean, who's going to argue against parental equality? It's just not a big ask. But then I didn't realise the resistance I come up against, the fanatical feminist Taliban, as I call Harriet Harman's branch of feminism. And you're kind of going, these people are just, they are genuinely batshit crazy. I mean, they're literally batshit crazy. And they're just obsessed with, well, they were obsessed about women's rights, but then obviously then that whole trans rights thing has collided with women's rights. But they to this day, they're I remember I did a talk at Cambridge University. So I've done talks at loads of places around the country. Oxford, which is generally okay, but Cambridge. And I turned up wearing a bit of a dodgy Vegas crocodile skin jacket, dodgy glasses, silver high heels, like David Bowie boots, as you do. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll try and win them over with my slightly colourful uniform. And wow, oh, did I get that wrong? And I said, I started by saying men are still useful for some things, like lifting manhole covers, genital origami. I mean, who could forget the puppetry of the penis? And then they just started shouting. I went in with a sense of humour. And then the worst part, people were, I said, I'm wearing these like Cuban heel boots. I said, ladies, I share your pain. These heels are bloody killing me. So I went in with all these kind of fairly probably not appropriate jokes. It was the wrong audience, really. And then I started, they started abusing. I started getting some people shouting and being quite abusive. And then when I rolled out my picture of Harriet Harman as Osama bin Harman, leader of the fanatical feminist part, it went ballistic. It went absolutely crazy. That to stop that thing. And I just said, look, I'm actually now worried I'm going to find my testicles hanging up on a lamppost outside the building in the morning. And the chair had to bring it to, and I thought, but you know what? Well, first one, it proved feminists have got no sense of humor. And then secondly, it proved, whatever you were going to say or do, it wasn't a debating chamber. It was a gas chamber for free speech. In my view, it was an absolutely horrendous experience. I had Erin Pizzey, who was the sort of the creator of the first women's refuge, is now a very pro father, and she was sitting there beside me, and she said she had warned me beforehand, don't go in because you're just going to trigger them, and it was like a mass triggering. But that's the level of hatred that's aimed at men and boys. And what we want, we want men and women to be equal. We want fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers come together in common cause for better outcomes for our children, better outcomes for families, better outcomes for our country, where we reduce the burden on the taxpayer. Because we're just chopping away half of a child's family where they could provide childcare, for example, the paternal mother and grandfather, all these things. If we introduce a presumption of shared care, right, a legal presumption of shared care, we would probably remove, in my opinion, 80 to 90% of the cases going through court. So we would slash the legal aid bill. And people say to me, oh, well, we don't. I said, well, if you don't believe me, let's trial it. Let's run a pilot. Let's test this idea that we've got, based on parental equality. So there are so many benefits. When I speak to politicians, I spoke to Nigel Farage a while back, and he was saying, well, what's the cost to the country of introducing shared care? I said, how much are we going to save? It's not about a cost. It's a saving. It's a net saving. And but the people in power, I say the bureaucratic command structure, who remain under the Tories, who remain under Labour, are fiercely opposed to it. And that's why it will only change with ultimately some kind of political solution.
Yeah, it's like how you've described it then. I don't understand it, because like you say, it could be, if it was dead flexible as well, because you get kind of relationships where you have to have a structure in and you want dates for the kids. Whereas if it was dead flexible as well, and it was like, right, and I suppose it's just a communications a biggie between divorced parents, and they're not always going to not every divorce is amicable, is it? Let's be honest. Very few are amicable. So yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? That one.
But if you look at the number, just look at the recent stats, the stats where parents who separate, I think it's over 43% of separating parents now go to court. That's a huge number. It's moving up to half.
Yeah.
That's a massive number. The number of cases are increasing 5 to 10% year on year. There's obviously no legal aid for dads, though I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing in some respects, because I wouldn't advise use of solicitors ever. But the underlying dynamics are up, and that's because you've got these deadbeat, muppet mums, crummy mummies, like the Katie Prices, the Kerry Katonas, people who are setting this terrible example. We can have kids with multiple men and then deny the father's access, and with impunity in most cases. And I've seen it in countless cases, and those cases set in train this dangerous legacy that you can have a child without a father. And then that's the fatherless generation, which is now what we've got, with millions of children living in fatherless homes, with either no contact or very little contact with their dads. And that has huge consequences for us as a society and a country, and on the mental health of our children. I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, because like even like girls, you get, okay, boys growing up without a father, obviously, as we said, the dad becomes a local gang dealer, local drug dealer. Then you've got girls whose first experience of a man then tends to be a sexual one because the father's not at home, or is with mum's boyfriend or mum's carousel of boyfriends, who's coming in the back door, who's going out the front door. It goes on all the time. And we're in an age of obviously online dating. Click, 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 click. So, and you can meet somebody like that. I've had mothers meet somebody. A mother a while back. She was in Chelmsford. She met somebody, took the kids to Newcastle, so hundreds of miles away. Luckily, we went to court straight away and got the children returned the following weekend. You've got mothers said, "Oh, I'm not in a relationship with the dad, not in a relationship with the dad," and yet they're pictured in local paper upside down in the car at 2 o'clock in the morning. Somewhere. So you go, okay, I don't think that really stacks up, that story. But the overriding principle that we campaign for is parental equality and a legal presumption of 50-50 shared care, which should be the de facto. That should be anybody with any ounce of common sense should be going, absolutely bloody right. If there's a safeguarding issue at some point, they can raise it at some point, either party. Dad could raise it about mum's new boyfriend, that's all. But let's have some common sense. Let's have a system which is fair, right? But at the moment, this is fundamentally abusive to fathers and it's abusive to children. And nobody wins in this. Nobody,
Yeah. But there's a financial element as well there. I don't know if you mentioned it. I didn't pick up on it. But again, if the kind of mother refuses access to the father, they still get full child support, don't they? So why there's a financial aspect to it, of course they're going to do it. Well, not all mums, right? But if there's a financial aspect there, they'll think, hold on a minute, if I stop the dad seeing the kids and there's not good, they have no rights, and I'm going to get full child support.
Ka-ching. It's ka-ching. I mean, the less you see the children, the more you pay, based on the number of nights. It is in mother's best interest to stop contact because she'll get more money. How's she going to pay for the Lamborghini, the fake tan, the hair extensions, with other things, right? How is she going to? A lot of mothers will be in new relationships with wealthy people, but that's not taken into account. The dad, they'll take it out of his gross income. So, and the CMS has quasi judicial powers. So they can take money out of a bank account. There's all sorts of things they can do to punish you. A lot of dads go, "Oh, I'm going to get my ex. I'm going to try and placate my ex. I'm going to buy her a car or do something." I just had an email in today from somebody who says what I always hear, which is, "Oh, I've given all this extra money, but the CMS said I've now they've miscalculated and there's an outstanding liability of like 5 or 6 grand he's got to pay. I've just given all this extra money." And they said, "Well, we're not interested." So don't give her any extra money. You only give your ex what the liability, what your CMS liability is. Pay them exactly to the penny. When it's school time in September, no more money for new school. There's no extra money. So that's down to you. If you went to the CMS, that's your problem with the CMS. If you want more money, go and speak to them. But you only pay your liability to them. But it is an appalling system simply because it works on this basis that you have to pay for children most of the time you can't see, or a lot of dads can't see. And even if you get 50-50, and I had a case of a barrister friend of mine who got locked up. He had 50-50 share care of his children, and they still said he had a liability, and he refused to pay it, and ended up in Bristol Nick.
Wow.
And
I thought 50-50 was like if you have the 50-50, then there is no child to support.
Well, there should be,
right?
but often mothers will just. So the CMS takes the mother's word at face value.
They do. You're right.
Yeah. So they'll say whatever mum says, they will go, okay, yeah, fine. Whatever dad says, you'll need at least a court order or something to prove you've got the children half the time, for example, or something like that. So it is a punitive system was introduced by the Conservative government. And again, it's based on this concept of deadbeat dads. Deadbeat dads was actually a phrase coined by Ronald Reagan in the early 80s, but picked up by Thatcher in the late 80s. And it was used as basically we become political sort of whipping boys. Anything to do with, poor single mums, it's all down to deadbeat dads. Let's hammer them. Let's say they've not paid all his child support. Completely omitting the fact that millions of fathers can't see their kids and have been trying to go for the family cause. Oh no, let's distract. Well, let's look at this over here and let's not look at the real issue. And the real issue is, everything needs to be interlinked. Child support, we should have presumption 50-50 share care. If there's a 50-50 share care, why is there any child support liable? Because it's 50-50. And that's the basis. And, and a lot of mums, but even in divorce, Chris, even worse. But you look at divorce proceedings. Spoke to solicitor earlier today, I mentioned. This solicitor is, I know that solicitor was lying through her back teeth to a client of mine. And she's saying that they're going to get this all resolved and it's going to be sort of rainbows over London and unicorns running down the M1 and it's all going to be beautiful, tra-la-la-la, kumbaya, my lord, all that sort of thing. 100% bullshit. She knows it's 100% bullshit because she knows that's her job, but she's selling this kind of pipe dream. I had a friend of mine last year. He'd been told that this was all going to be with finances we resolved. It's all going to be beautiful. And it wasn't. He spent 200 grand. Last time I spoke to him, he spent 200,000. And they said, oh, she's going to settle. She ain't settling. She's going to take everything she can do. And if the child's living with her, divorce is based on need, she's going to come at you for 70% of the assets, 80% of the assets, 90% of the assets. And if you're a father who think you can bullshit your way through a court, forget it. They will come after you. They will come after you. And so there is a fundamental dishonesty within the legal system. I mean, we always say, we tell you what you need to hear. Solicitors tell you what you want to hear, but you will burn silly money. It's like lemmings running off a cliff. So the solicitor goes, all right, yeah, let's get the divorce done. So the divorce is the technical bit. Oh yeah, let's get the finances done, the finances bit. Oh, and they leave the children's proceedings to last. Well, the fact is children should be first, because if you end up with 50-50 share care of children, that would have a huge effect on your finances. How can you settle finances if you don't know where the children are going? So there's all these issues and stuff within the system, but it is fundamentally unjust and it is incredibly discriminatory against men. And I say to men, you need to read up, arm up, become factivists, and don't rush off and don't follow what your solicitors say, because you will end up, unfortunately, in many, many cases, in a very serious position where you've spent, and I'll tell you the spends here, 10 to 30,000 average with a solicitor. 10 to 30, average. That's just ordinary people like me and you.
Well, that's a deposit for a house, isn't it? To house you and your
that's your children's inheritance,
well,
right?
Yeah, that as well, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going out the door. Then you can go up to, I had 80, 150, mate of mine, 250K with Michigan de Rea until I got involved. The guy from JLS spent 800,000. And the biggest spend we had here was Van Morrison at 3.4 mil. And the first thing I said to him, you're going to fire your solicitors. I was introduced via Bob Geldof. And I said to him, the first thing you do, otherwise we're not touching the case. I will not deal with solicitors. I just will not deal with them because they're pathological liars in most cases. And so we fired his solicitors. And then we did more in 3 months than the solicitors done in 3 years. And
that's brilliant.
So that was good, but the cost of this and then the financial implications of fathers, this misplaced faith in solicitors, what's going to lead them into an even worse position. This is blood money. These people are not here to help you; they are there to run a business. And every time you fund a solicitor, you're funding family law injustice. You're feeding the system. Yeah, you're not you're not helping yourself and you're not helping any others. So that's my perspective on it. But it's something where I want men to be smart. I want men to think about these things, not to accept that going to solicitor is going to be the smartest thing to do. Because in my view, you need to get several opinions and then form a judgment.
I think it comes down to what we said about the three types of dads as well. And not only that, that falls into kind of the divorce thing as well, because again, I've seen it firsthand, where guys, they start off trying to battle it out and get sort of a fair cut. I've never met a dad yet that's turned around and said that he wants, or a divorcee that wants more than what he was kind of entitled to. Their stance has always been, well, how about 50-50? And a lot of dads will turn around and go, well, I'm happy to give a little bit more because obviously the kids may be with the mother a bit more of the time because of various factors. But then it just never turns out that way. And then the amount of dads I know that give up in the end, and then they end up 70% of their pension. And they have to start again at whatever time of life that is.
Well, not only they get to our, I mean, how old are you, Chris?
I'm 44 next week.
You're baby, right? So I'm 57, right? Still alive.
You look well off it though, pal. You look well off it. I'll give you that.
Alcohol probably preserved me. But I was supposed to be dead many years ago. There's another story. I'm still here, much to the annoyance of my friends and enemies. But the point is that, in terms of solicitors and in terms of this issue of paying money, is divorce is based on these. And so when you go to court, don't forget the courts, there's no presumption of divorce equality in this country. If you go to Sweden, there's no spousal maintenance, right? You don't get it. The equivalent of spousal maintenance in Sweden is to buy the mother a bike to go and get a job. In my view, I'd go the extra few quid and get an electric bike and get a job interview quicker. And that's it. And that should be it. I thought this was the age of equality. I thought women were supposed to stand on their own 2 feet, right? That's what's supposed to be happening. So why are they coming to men that they hate, that they've denied the children? And why are they coming for spousal maintenance? Why are they coming for free handouts? And then the whole issue is then that obviously if the mother can also claim financial relief for her legal costs, she can claim obviously costs for child support. And there's a whole litany of things. And you say in cases, I mean, I expect a guy the other day who'd lost 90% of all assets and was literally in a bed sit and was a guy the other day spoke, lovely guy down in the West Country. The mother's accused him of financially controlling behavior. He lives in a fucking van in Cornwall, right? He works on the railways in the Southwest. What financial control is he exerting on her? It's zero. She lives in East Anglia, and he's down in the arse end of England. He's got to pay for the fuel, the travel, if he stays in a hotel or bed and breakfast or whatever, and all these costs fall on him, and she's accusing him of financial abuse. I mean, you could not make it up. And this is not an isolated incident. Case after case after case after case. No wonder dads give up. Because I mean, I understand. I mean, I'm a guy, right? I'm a street fighter. I'm Irish. We come from fighting Irish, yeah. So I love a fight. Bring it on, and I'll do my best. But I understand why people go, I can't keep doing it. Yeah. As I said in my case, I got to the point doing the hamster wheel of misery, as I used to call it. Why am I continuing? Why am I, I just, my own mental health. What's the benefit? So we got to look at it when we speak to people. What's the risk reward ratio? And there are some cases I say to people, if the children are too old, there is a little point in you pursuing it, because you can't enforce an order on a 13, 14, 15-year-old child. But there are other cases where the children are younger, absolutely go to court. If mother's stopped all contact, go to court. If there's still some contact continuing, well, maybe, let's see what we can do to try and increase that. But we may need to go to court. But in most cases, mothers have stopped contact. In most cases that I deal with, mothers have stopped contact. And we have to get into court quickly. The guy the other day, whose the child was born, and it was clearly the mother had set him up just to have the child. and then to deny them access. And luckily, we got into court with an emergency application. We were able to stop the child being registered under the mother's name. So we got that stopped with what's called a privilege of steps order. So she couldn't register the child as under her name. And now we've got contact started, even though the child's literally newly born. So we've got contact restarted. All these things that have benefited from the father hugely. Another one of my team was in court the other day with a guy, lovely bloke, and the mother had gone in with a non-molestation order, saying the dad was a risk and a threat. It was complete nonsense. She brought a barrister, some arrogant barrister, along, and then the barrister tried to stay for the family proceedings. We said, "You're on legal aid ticket, a certificate for the non-mob. You can't stay in court for the rest of the hearing." And he said, "Oh, I'm working for free now." And you're going to go in. Anyway, the non-mob was refused. Everything she wanted was chucked out. And the dad's in a really good position now to get some really, really good kind of order. But it is a battle.
That allegation there is horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you've talked about, and there's no kind of.
They can say what they like. Katie Price, right? About Katie Price, were involved in that case up until December last year. Katie Price case, the worst case, hardly a surprise, but the worst case I've ever seen. The allegations against her were horrific. I won't go into them now, but they were horrific. And yeah, absolutely clear case of child abuse, serious child abuse. Children at risk of harm. We complained to the police, did nothing. We complained to social services, and the social worker allocated to the family. We knew there was something wrong. We said there was something wrong. The relationship was inappropriate. Guess what? The social worker was actually working for Katie Price directly. And she got fired from West Sussex Children's Services. And the courts basically sat in her hands for 6-7 months. I don't know what's happened since. But we withdrew from the case when the father stopped following our advice. And we said, you've got to take the children into your care. And he didn't. And at that point, we thought we just can't be morally, ethically be involved in a case. And there were various reasons, obviously, he had for not following our advice. But I felt very strongly about it. It was inappropriate. So all these things are horrendous. You know, every day we get about 20, 30 emails at least from people seeking help. But everybody is in a desperate state. You know, everybody's in a desperate state. You know. So, you know, it's a sticky situation.
But obviously, you know, we talked about the kind of backlash you've had from feminists and stuff like that. But there must be, I mean, there will be a percentage of women that do support, you know, this as well, don't they? You know, it's not just all negative.
Yeah. I mean, there was a huge number of women. A third of our supporters are women. And we've got, obviously, you know, mothers, sisters, grandmothers. So a huge number of women are absolutely supportive. And actually, some of the most militant supporters are actually women who are very angry about the treatment of their new partner, for example, or and say, you know, why is this happening? You know, why is this happening? So this is not about men versus women. This is about, you know, common sense against this kind of fanatical feminist ideology, as I call it, which has robbed a generation of children of their fathers. This is like gender cleansing on a scorched earth policy of removing children from family, as fathers from families. And it's not an accident. It's a deliberate strategy. It's a deliberate policy, as evidenced by the numbers. And if it was any other group of people in this country, there would be outrage. We've always enjoyed, you know, huge support for. We've been campaigning for a minister for men, so I think we've had 80% support for a minister for men to represent us, to represent boys in this country. We've also had, you know, huge public support for us as a campaign. I mean, like 82-83%. Again, I think the last YouGov poll was on that in terms of dealing with support. What support is there? I think we're the third highest supported campaign group behind Greenpeace and Amnesty at one point. We've obviously got a lower profile now But as I say, because we've evolved, and I could go and do something. We had a great idea for a stunt on Saturday night, last Saturday just gone, and I wish I could tell you it's great. And it's simple.
Tell me off air in a minute.
I'll tell you off air, but it clashes with something else we've got going on, a big court case. And I'm going to, like, if we do something, then what's the impact going to be on our team? We've only got a small team. And can we manage the fallout? And the answer to that is probably not. So we may just need to postpone it to another time. But yeah, my right leg gets jiggy, Chris, and you look like quite a fit man. I think you look quite good in a super suit on Buckingham Palace. I could send my tailor down and get you measured up, brother.
Yeah. Well, I don't think my employer would be kind of too pleased with that. So,
well, just you're doing it for the greater good.
The greater good. I want to just quickly ask you to one sort of. So again, a lot of followers probably from watching this will be from the military background and various other backgrounds. But so I have a very close friend that he has his child religiously every weekend from Friday till Sunday. But I believe his ex-partner claims that he doesn't have them to claim more child support. Is there any way of kind of proving to the child support that you have the child when you say you have them?
Get a court order.
Get a court order.
So what we need to do, go to mediation in the first instance, offer mediation. She probably won't attend, but it's like a tick box exercise. Just say you've been to mediation. The mediator will then give you what's called the MIAM form, which is MIAM. And then he can make an application to court. He puts in mother's address. There's a website called Court Finder, puts her address into Court Finder. That will tell him where the nearest family court is. Whereabouts is he based?
Nottinghamshire.
Nottinghamshire. So you're probably not in a family court or something like that. And then you file the application online, and cost is £255. And what he's applying for is a child arrangements order. Okay, so you could apply for the contact as it is at the moment. We could apply for an increase in contact. How old's the children?
Well, it's one child, and I believe 6 or 7.
Oh yeah, well, definitely worth doing it, because he's going to have issues for the next 7, 9 years. So it's worth getting the arrangement. Remember, the only thing that protects your relationship with your children is not a phone agreement. It's not a paper agreement. It's not a mediated agreement. Mediated agreement is legally privileged, can't be used in court. The only thing that's going to protect your relationship with your children is a court order. End of. There's nothing else to discuss about it. Whatever anybody tells you, you need a court order. And that's, if he's got issues now, things will not get better, I'm afraid to say. I mean, a lot of dads go, things might improve and all the rest of it. And I'm afraid the direction of travel is always, it's that way. You can only reason with reasonable people. And if I'm down the pub, I'm in Brighton in the pub on tomorrow night. God, I'm going to need a drink at the end of this week. I'm in Brighton, and I can promise you, if I go into a bar, 2 or 3 people will come up and say, "Oh, Matt, why won't you just be reasonable?" I mean, why won't you? And I'm going, that's like asking, like, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? It's a rhetorical question that will echo the eternities. There is no answer. Do not expect her to be reasonable, right? She will not be reasonable, right? That is once they've gone down a particular avenue, right? You're just going to have to go. The only way I can deal with this is to nail this issue to the ground properly, get a court order. And what you should do is, when he makes the application, he needs to wrap up. Is he getting all school information, right? Is he getting all GP information in line with his parental rights and responsibilities? Has he been in social services involved, in which case he needs to do a subject access request to local authority to see what information is being held on him. And then make sure that she is not discussing legal matters with the child. Make sure you do safeguarding checks on all adults living with the child. So if you've got a new partner, do safeguarding checks. All these things need to be put in the application. Also, holidays. You want to take your child on holiday, passport is given to you by the mother 21 days before travel. right? So it gives you time to go to court if there's an issue. She doesn't give you the passport. Also, you'll share when you both go away. Both parties share travel details, flight details, etc. There's a provision for the child to speak to the other parent, twice a week, 3 times a week when they're away at 6 p.m. local time. And factor all those things in. He needs half a holidays, alternate Christmases, alternate birthdays, Father's Day. That's just like the basics. But he could ask for every other weekends, collect from school Friday, return to school Monday. So there's no contact with the parents, or he could apply for shared care, live with both parents, or the 50-50. And that would have an impact on his CMS payments hugely, because it's all based on the number of nights. But
Yeah.
she might say, oh, well, he's doing it about CMS. Well, I could tell you that's exactly what every other mother does. It's not like these mothers aren't sitting there going, yeah, they'll do it for CMS, they'll be doing it for the divorce finance, etc., etc. So my view on it is that you need to have as many overnights as possible with your child, at least 50-50, which is what I think is the best way. And that's all about having a proper relationship with your children. So the bonding rituals, tea time, bath time, bedtime, breakfast time, all those rituals, which will increase your bond with your child, and the paternal family's bond with the child, which is so important. So all those things to me are really, really important. But the only way you can deal with it is by going to court. Going to court is not as difficult in some cases as some people think. Oh, to make the application is the most important thing. But do not sit on your hands, because if that child gets to 9, 10, 11, it's going to get a lot more difficult to go to court, because their views and wishes will carry more weight. They spent more time with the mother and being poisoned by the mother, because they're in this environment where the mother is almost certainly bad-mouthing the father. And so if you're going to go to court, the sooner you go, the better. If you delay can be fatal.
Okay. Well, no, look.
That makes sense.
No, it all makes sense to me. And look, I'm conscious of the fact that you've been on for over an hour now, but I think what you've kind of, for my followers and viewers, I think the kind of information you give there, it will be invaluable to them. And there's a lot of guys that will be ready. Is there what's the best way for someone to contact you if they seek advice, if you're happy to give that?
Yeah. Visit fathers4justice.org. Go over there. We're on Twitter and Instagram. It's at F4J official. So yeah, to go through any of those, but go through the website is probably the starting point. There's loads of information on there about the help services that we provide. But if you've got an issue with the mother, and obviously you're the dad, we are your people. We do what it says on the tin. We're not, we do the best we can do with the limited resources we have, but our mission, and it's a very clear mission, has been our mission for 23 years, is to get as much help to as many people as possible, and make sure that we're reuniting children and fathers, which is obviously, the most satisfying part of the work that we do. I'm not saying it's easy to do it, but it is. You've got it's just about you. It's about you've got responsibility and duty care to your children. These children need the love, care, and support of their fathers. I think it's the most important thing in the world. It's the most important bond that you as a father will ever have. I am lucky. I'm blessed, because I went through it and I survived. And I've got my eldest boy is 28, went to work for NASA.
Wow.
Can you believe it? I was just joking. It'd be great when we find out how his father is. I don't know how he's related to me. My middle son works in F1 in media. So he was photographed with Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone the other day. You'll see him in the background filming and doing photography. And then my youngest, my Aaron son, you probably heard in the background, Archie is 18 and is into his boxing and fleecing his father. And I tell you one thing, the story that you don't imagine these things, but he's had a girlfriend, 2 different girlfriends now. Jesus, that's a whole new world, mate. It's a whole new world to deal with all that stuff going on. It's stuff that I'm thinking, there's no father should have to hear this stuff or to be dealing with certain things. So yeah, so there is a there can be a downside, but I'm lucky they're all three gorgeous, beautiful lads, and it just shows. I mean, a few years ago, Daniel Mel's was in California, and we went for a trip to Vegas, boys' trip to Vegas. Can you believe it? And we stopped in Death Valley, and I thought, do you know what? When I was suicidal all those years ago, and on Waterloo Bridge thinking about jumping in, thank God I didn't. What could I have missed? What would I? What, you know? It is unthinkable now. But have hope. And if there's anything we can do to help you and your family and stuff, then obviously reach out to us and we will do our best for you.
No, brilliant, Matt. Look, I applaud what you're doing. And, you know, I think without people like you doing what you've done, I think that the situation will probably be a lot worse. So like I say, thank you very much for all you've done for the dads out there, and will continue to do.
And Chris, can I just say thank you for doing what you do and for reaching out to us and for giving us the opportunity about speaking about this very important and important and serious issue. And yeah, I'm really grateful for your time as well.
No problem at all. I like to give everybody a voice and have a diverse kind of variety of guests that people can relate to. And like I say, my main goal is to push mental health across the board for everybody. Everyone deserves to be happy.
Absolutely.
And the negativity in the world, I don't like negativity. I'm all about positivity nowadays. So that's where I'm at with it, pal.
Brilliant, sir. Thank you so much.
No worries. Well, I'll have a quick chat with you off air in a second. But it's been an absolute pleasure, pal. And you take care and good luck with everything you do in the future.
Cheers, Chris. God bless. Take care, mate.
Thank you.